Beowulf. 3 strikes. Beowulf, the hero of Helsingør. It was the early 1970s, and Helsingør, a small coastal town in Denmark, was known for its quiet streets, friendly people, and old-world charm. Nestled near the edge of the North Sea, the town had a long history of tradition and community. The heart of it all was King's Hall, a beautiful old community center run by Harold King, a kind-hearted man who treated everyone like family. On weekends, you could find the whole town there, gathered for dinners, music, and celebrations. But one day, Helsingør's peace was shattered by the arrival of a man named Grendel. Grendel wasn't just any thug, he was a monster of a man. Standing over 2 meters tall and built like a brick shit house. He towered over everyone. With shoulders broad as a Viking's, a barrel chest, and fists like hammers, Grendel looked more like a force of nature than a human being. He had recently been released from a brutal period in prison and had come to Helsingør to vent his rage. Grendel didn't just cause trouble, he owned the night. He showed up at King's Hall every evening like clockwork, crashing through the doors and shoving people aside as if they were rag dolls. Since his first visit, he stormed in and demanded everyone's money, spewing obscenities and smashing tables. When the men tried to intervene, he tossed them around like pickled herring, sending some to the hospital with broken ribs and black eyes. No one in town dared to confront him again. Grendel continued his nightly visits, terrorizing anyone who stayed late at the hall. He would eat the food, drink the beer, and wreck anything he didn't like, leaving the once bustling hall in ruins. Soon, people stopped coming, and the heart of the town fell silent. Harold King tried everything. He hired guards, called the police, and even put up barricades, but it was no use. Grendel broke through them all. One night, a local boxer named Lars decided he'd had enough. He was a big man himself, known for his strength and skill, but when he faced Grendel, it was over in less than a minute. Grendel lifted Lars off the ground and slammed him down so hard that the floorboards cracked and Lars filled his pants with a laundry emergency. With Lars defeated, Grendel stood over him and roared, "Is there no one in this town who can challenge me?" From then on, King's Hall was abandoned. No one dared enter after dark, and Grendel continued his rampage, ruling the town like a one-man army. Then came a stranger named Beowulf. Ben was not looking for trouble. A Danish-American war veteran who served in Vietnam, Ben was passing through Helsingør on his way to visit old family and friends. He was lean but solid, with sharp eyes and a quiet confidence that came from years of combat experience. He found himself at a small cafe one afternoon, listening to the locals whispering in fear about Grendel's latest destruction. Curious, Ben struck up a conversation with the cafe owner. "Who is this Grendel everyone is so afraid of?" he asked. The owner glanced around nervously. He's a monster. A real beast of a man. He comes to King's Hall every night, destroys the place, and no one can stop him. Why not? Ben frowned. Because, the owner said gravely. He's not just strong, he's ruthless. He fights like a wild animal. No one who has gone up against him has come back the same. Ben was silent for a moment. Then he asked, "Who is in charge of this hall?" "Harold King," the owner replied. "But he has given up hope. Grendel has broken his spirit." Ben took a deep breath. He had been looking for some peace and quiet, but maybe this was a challenge he could not walk away from. That evening he made his way to King's Hall and found Harold sitting in the empty hall, staring at the carnage Grendel had left behind. "Mr. King," Ben called gently. Harold looked up, eyes tired and hopeless. "Yeah. What do you want?" "My name is Beowulf," he said, "and I think I can help you." Harold's eyes widened. You want to face Grendel?" "That's right," Ben said, shrugging. "I've taken down worse. You just need to make sure no one else gets in the way." With a mixture of disbelief and hope, Harold agreed. That night, Ben stood alone in the darkened hall, waiting. Midnight came, and just as the clock struck 12, the door burst open, and Grendel loomed in the doorway. "You're new," Grendel growled, his eyes narrowing. "You think you can take me, little man? Let's see Shrek." Ben replied calmly. What happened next was nothing short of epic. Grendel charged, swinging his massive fists like sledgehammers. Ben ducked, narrowly avoiding a strike that would have caved in his skull. He moved fast, jabbing and weaving, his fists a blur of speed, but Grendel was a beast. Every punch seemed to bounce off his thick muscles. He grabbed a table and threw it at Ben, who barely dodged in time, but Ben had been in tougher spots before. Using his military training, he wore Grendel down, landing precise strikes at weak points. The knees, ribs, and jaw. Grendel roared in pain and fury, but Ben did not let up. He fought smart, using the hall's narrow spaces to his advantage, slipping in and out of Grendel's range. Finally, as Grendel charged again, Ben sidestepped and delivered a powerful uppercut, followed by a knee to the nuts. Grendel stumbled, gasping, and Ben seized the moment. With a roar of his own, he charged Grendel and slammed him down hard, knocking the giant unconscious. The town couldn't believe it. Grendel was defeated. For the first time in months, King's Hall was safe. Harold hugged Ben, tears in his eyes. "You've saved us," he said, "but be careful, there are rumors that Grendel is not alone." The rumors were true. 3 nights later, a sleek black car roared into town. Out stepped a tall, imposing woman dressed in leather, Grendel's mother, Grendola Modra. Grendola had been a champion fighter in the underground circuits of Copenhagen. When she heard what happened to her son, she swore vengeance. She stormed into King's Hall, axe in hand, and trashed the place, looking for Ben. "Where is the gringo?" she roared, swinging the axe and smashing windows. The people in the hall fled in terror. When Ben finally arrived, Grandola was standing in the ruins of the hall, her eyes burning with hatred. "You hurt my boy," she snarled. "Now, I'm going to break you in half." Their fight was brutal and unrelenting. Grandola was fast, swinging the axe like a lumberjack, keeping Ben on the defensive. She fought with a savage grace, using every trick in the book. Ben took several near misses, blood and sweat trickling down his face, but he didn't give up. He ducked and rolled, using the broken tables and chairs to block her attacks. In a quick move, Ben caught the head of the axe in the seat of a bar stool and yanked hard, pulling Grandola off balance. He tackled her to the ground, the two rolling in a vicious struggle. But Grandola was relentless. She even clawed at his face, nearly gouging out his eyes, but Ben twisted free and slammed her down to the floor. "Enough," he yelled, pinning her down. "This ends now." Grandola glared up at him, breathing hard, but she knew she was beaten. The police arrived and dragged her away, her curses echoing into the night. "I'll be back," she screamed. "You haven't seen the last of me." But she never returned. With Grandola Mondragon, Denmark's coastal town of Helsinger was finally free, for real this time. Beowulf was a hero. The townspeople sang him praise, and Harold made him an honorary guardian of King's Hall. Beowulf was happy to have helped. However, he had no plans to remain in Helsinki longer. Harold and his sons would take on the roles of guarding the King's Hall. As for Ben, it was time to go. Time to go home. He traveled northeast, to return to the lands where he was raised, and where he longed to live out the remainder of his life. Near 50 winters had passed since Beowulf first took up the charge of leadership, ruling over Gitland with a steady hand. His youth, once full of battles and heroism, had given way to decades of peace and prosperity. But when word spread of a monstrous cryptid lurking in the hills, destroying farms, abducting livestock and casting shadows of fear over the land, well, Ben knew his strength would be tested one last time. The beast, which the locals called the Wraith, was said to move like smoke, its form shape-shifting, eluding all who dared to hunt it. Determined, the old king gathered what few brave souls would still follow him. But they were no match for the fearsome presence that awaited them. As night closed in, the creature appeared, hulking and grotesque, its shape shifting in the dark, claws gleaming like polished obsidian. When panic gripped his men and they fled, only Ben and one young warrior named Wesley stood firm. "Let them go," Ben mumbled, the weight of years hanging on his voice. "All I need is one man who will not turn his back." With greedy resolve, The two of them fought the monster, Ben striking with his blade and Wes with his own small, sharp dagger. In the end, it was Ben's unyielding spirit that prevailed. With a final, desperate strike, he drove his blade into the heart of the beast, pinning it to the earth as it roared and writhed, before finally falling still. The battle, though, had taken its toll. Sinking to his knees beside the vanquished cryptid, Ben's breath came in shallow gasps. "Remember, Wes," he murmured. His gaze distant but fierce. "A man's worth is not in the battles he fights, but in the legacy he leaves." As the first light of dawn crept over the hills, the king who had safeguarded his land against darkness, both seen and unseen, closed his eyes for the last time. His name living on, long after the cryptid's shadow had faded. I enjoyed rewriting and reading this classic poem/story to you. If you enjoyed this book reading, please remember to hit the like button and leave a positive comment. I randomly respond to positive comments, so make yours stand out.